Primetime Asia. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Hello and welcome. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Hezbollah has continued to take constant hits in recent days, but is still trying to rearm and recover. His remarks come a day after Lebanon's health ministry reported 4 people killed in an Israeli airstrike. Meanwhile, Israel is preparing for the possibility that Hamas may return the bodies of several hostages tonight, though the handover has not yet been confirmed. Reports suggest that Hamas has located 3 bodies in eastern Khan Yunis, but there is no official verification of the bodies yet. The UK Defence Secretary has said that the Ministry of Defence is moving to strip Andrew Mountbatten Windsor of his final honorary military rank, following King Charles' direction. The King has reportedly made it clear that this step reflects his wishes after Andrew lost his royal titles last week. A Ukrainian drone attack has hit a tanker and an oil terminal in Russia's Black Sea port of Tuapse. Authorities have warned the strike could disrupt exports of crude oil and refined products. Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian has stated that Tehran is rebuilding its nuclear facilities with greater strength. While insisting the country is not seeking a nuclear weapon, Pezeshkian's remarks come during a visit to Iran's Atomic Energy Organization, where he has met with senior officials from the country's nuclear industry. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius has said that he is confident a new voluntarily military service plan will be agreed upon in time to take effect by 2026, despite the coalition disagreements as Germany aims to boost recruits and reservists amid growing security concerns. Ten people were seriously injured in a series of stabbings on a London-bound train near Cambridge, prompting the arrest of 2 suspects, while Prime Minister Keir Starmer has called the incident deeply concerning, as counter-terrorism police has joined the investigation to determine the motive behind the attack. US President Donald Trump is set to host his Syrian counterpart Ahmed al-Sharaa at the White House on 10th November tentatively. This will be the first ever visit by a Syrian head of state, Washington, after decades of international isolation. Israel is preparing for the possibility that Hamas may return the bodies of hostages tonight. According to reports, discussions are underway, though it remains unclear whether the handover will actually take place. Hamas has not yet issued any official confirmation. Reports from Saudi have said that the terrorist group has located the bodies of 3 hostages in eastern Khan Yunis, a claim that has not been independently verified. Israeli officials say that the bodies of 11 hostages are still believed to be held in Gaza. The development comes as tensions remain high across the Strip, with families of the hostages urging renewed efforts to bring their loved ones home. Now, for this discussion, we welcome Dan Perry. He's a political analyst, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Dan, for joining us again. Good to see you. Dan, how are the report of repeated strikes while this ceasefire is in effect? How does this affect the operational strategic calculation of both Israel and Hamas, and what are the challenges and risks associated with the next phase, and also bringing back the hostages' bodies, as we know that from recent reports that one or few of the bodies that were handed were not of the hostages that were supposed to be the bodies of the Israeli hostages?
Well, from the Israeli side, there is always skepticism about Hamas claims about everything, including the numbers of casualties, including when they say they can't find bodies, Israel assumes Hamas is lying. Uh, when they return bodies of a hostage, it turns out to not have been a hostage. Again, Israel assumes Hamas might have done it on purpose. Is it fair on the part of Israel to be so skeptical? That's the genius of lies coming from people who are professional liars. You never know whether to believe them or not. There's always a chance that it's actually true they can't find the bodies. Israel's ceasefire violations. It's several cases where it resumed attacks, which supposedly led to fantastically huge civilian casualties in Gaza, but again, Israel doesn't believe that necessarily, were obviously efforts to push Hamas to stop this policy of delaying the hostage returns and doing it piecemeal, which is obviously very troubling for the families and for Israeli society at large, and is perceived in Israel as basically an effort to buy time until sort of people wary of the expectation that the entire 20-point plan will be carried out. The assumption in Israel is that Hamas does not want to carry out the key point of the 20-point plan, which is its own disarmament and removal from Gaza. And this is a very complex thing where Israel finds itself in alignment with most of the Arab countries who also want Hamas to be gone. And almost certainly with the majority of the Palestinian population who surely wants Hamas to be gone. And in preparation for a future where this effort to disarm Hamas has failed, we now see the sort of grim efforts to come up with an alternative plan. And the current discussion is about Israel maintaining about half the territory of Gaza, which is the perimeter around the interior, which is controlled by Hamas, and where about 90% of the Palestinians currently live, the Gaza Palestinians. And in that area, using that area as a buffer zone, and who knows, maybe in the future, allowing the creation of humanitarian cities there, or zones, or tent cities, some temporary housing for Palestinians who want to flee the external half of the strip, rather the internal half of the strip where Hamas remains in charge, and that's enable a future military assault on the interior of the Gaza Strip at this time, without either the hostages in the way or perhaps with fewer Palestinian civilians in the way.
And Dan, how might these developments influence regional security dynamics, particularly the involvement of the mediators like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Qatar, and also the international organization like Red Cross?
Well, international organizations have great difficulty operating in police states and areas run by extremists or, as in this case, terrorist groups. Obviously, everything would function better. The UN organizations, the Red Cross, World Food Organization, everyone would function better if Hamas were indeed removed. They're in a difficult position, of course, because a lot of these organizations in such situations are staffed by locals who are afraid of the criminal authorities, and so you have this odd situation, which also exposes the UN organizations, for example, to charges that are potentially true, that their own staffers are collaborators with the terrorist regime. It's just an awful situation, and I mean, as I've said many times on your show, until Hamas is removed, versions of a nightmare will continue to occur. As for the broader regional geostrategic situation, the moderate Arab states, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, Jordan, and others are, I think, rather solidly aligned with Israel and the West in calling for the 20-point plan to be implemented and Hamas to indeed disarm, which is complex. Qatar, Turkey, in the past have supported Hamas. I think this is a real testing moment for those countries that are more closely aligned with the broader Muslim Brotherhood, from which sprang Hamas, and which had in the past played both sides, to decide if they really want to align with the West. It would be extremely helpful for all the mediators in all their various stripes, in particular Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, to just put the hammer down on Hamas, to make clear that they support that there should be no further reconstruction, no reconstruction beginning in the areas of Gaza controlled by Hamas, because it is clear that Hamas will therefore use such a process to rebuild tunnels, to rearm itself, to basically use that assistance to strengthen itself once more and to make permanent its diabolical rule. That obviously creates a terrible situation for the poor civilians who are held hostage by Hamas. I'm talking about the Gazans. And that is why I say solutions need to be found for them if reconstruction indeed does not begin, because Hamas has chosen to basically hang on. It's extremely difficult.
Yes, indeed, the challenge is still high. Thank you very much, Dan Perry, for joining us and emphasizing on the points. Thank you very much. Now we stay in the region. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has stated that Hezbollah continues to take hits constantly, including these very days, but has warned that the group is simultaneously trying to rearm and recover. His remarks came ahead of the cabinet meeting in Jerusalem, a day after Lebanon's ministry claimed 4 people were killed in an Israeli strike in Lebanon. Let's listen into what Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has said.
חיזבאללה אכן סופג מכות כל הזמן, כולל בימים הללו, אבל הוא גם מנסה להתחמש ולהתאושש. אנחנו מצפים ממשלת לבנון שתבצע את מה שהתחייבה לעשות, כלומר, לפרז את חיזבאללה מנשקו, אבל ברור שאנחנו נממש את זכותנו להגנה עצמית, כפי שהדבר הזה נקבע בתנאי הפסקת האש. אנחנו לא ניתן ללבנון להפוך לחזית מחודשת נגדנו.
Netanyahu has further urged the Lebanese government to honor its pledge to disarm Hezbollah, saying Israel expects action to prevent the group from strengthening. He has also reiterated that Israel will continue to exercise its right to self-defense under the ceasefire, warning that Lebanon must not become a new front against Israel. Netanyahu has stressed that his government will act as necessary to ensure its security. Now we stay in the region. Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian has stated that Tehran would rebuild its nuclear facilities with greater strength while maintaining that the country is not seeking to develop nuclear weapons. He has made these remarks during a visit to Iran's Atomic Energy Organization, where he met with senior officials from the country's nuclear sector. His comments came after U.S. President Donald Trump warned that he would order new strikes if Iran tried to restart facilities that were bombed by the United States in June. Washington has claimed those sites were part of a weapons program, a charge Tehran continues to deny, insisting its nuclear activities are for civilian and health-related purposes. Pezeshkian has stated that destroying buildings and factories would not weaken Iran's resolve, adding that the country would rebuild and move forward with greater determination. Let's listen into what Iranian president has said.
سعی میکنن در دنیا گسترش بدن اینه که ما به طرف هسته‌ای رفتیم برای اینکه بمب درست کنیم، در صورتی که مقام معظم رهبری اعلام کردن و فتوا دادن که ما به طرف بمب از نظر اعتقادی نمیتونیم بریم. همیشه من اینو گفتم، ما اگر به مغزها و دانشمندانمون تکیه کنیم به این سادگی با تخریب یکی دوتا مسئله رو نمیتونن حل کنن.
Now for this discussion, we welcome back Dan Perry. He's a political analyst, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Dan, for staying with us. Now looking at this, what do you think, or what could be the motive and reason behind this latest reports of Iran restarting their nuclear facilities and their openness also to indirect nuclear talks?
Well, I'm reminded of Occam's razor, the principle of philosophy that says that the correct answer to a question usually is the simplest one. Obviously, Iran remains determined to at least toy with the idea of achieving nuclear weapon threshold state status. And that is the only reason why you would ever rebuild facilities that enable enrichment to beyond 5%, There is no civilian use. Indeed re-establish the nuclear program even stronger than before, as Pezeshkian says. It is incredible that the Iranians show such brazen indifference to the world's obvious insistence that they not pursue this path. It is, in a normal country, stunning that a leadership would so endanger its own people by creating unnecessary conflict with the entire universe, pretty much, except for maybe China and Russia, for so little reason that one watches in utter stupefaction. Now, we're looking here at basically a tremendous missed opportunity by President Trump, who, in his infantile insistence on declaring premature victory in June, declared that the nuclear facilities were completely obliterated and was insistent that there was nothing more to be done, and even started musing out loud that given the total obliteration, there was no need for a deal or for talks. And it enabled Iran to wriggle out of a situation where the regime was on its back foot. There was a real possibility of sparking significant domestic unrest or infighting within the Revolutionary Guard or the military, and in general the Iranian regime, such that the result might be a less oppressive future government in Iran. They were scared. And when they saw Trump basically declaring that the job is done before it was done, they slowly began to regroup, to crack down on domestic dissent, to first muse about rebuilding their missile and nuclear program, and now apparently actually moving to do that. It is an outrage. And what should have been done by a more intelligent U.S. administration would have been to seize the moment and to insist that the Iranian regime, as a condition of being allowed to survive and not being further attacked, essentially agree to end the nuclear program, end their long-range ballistic missile program, and forswear any further support for militias around the region, which Iran has used as proxies to undermine a wide swath of Arab countries in a manner that is complete interference in its neighbors' affairs. All of this should have been brought to a crushing and immediate end as a result of what was a successful war action by Israel and the U.S. And very, very sadly, the opportunity was missed because of Trump's short attention span.
And Dan, as you mentioned, it's very bold of Iran to make this move. Why do you think they're doing this, and why do you think they can afford to do this? Why do you think, where's this confidence in Iran coming from?
Well, why does a scorpion bite? Because it's a scorpion. This is what they do. Iran's regime, obviously, is determined to continue the behavior that is in its DNA, which is aggression towards its neighbors and jihadist Islam that it aims to spread around the world by means of intimidation of its neighbors. And the idea of building a nuclear program is part of that broader strategy. Also, to a degree, while the regime in Iran is definitely not popular, they have successfully harnessed nationalistic sentiment by attaching it to the idea that Iran has sovereignty when it comes to a nuclear program and should not allow the world to kick them around. In every society, it's possible to for oppressive governments to invent enemies from outside and to summon up through the argument of patriotism some support that they otherwise would not have.
With that, I would like to thank Dan Perry for joining us and staying with us, also sharing that insight with us. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Europe. The UK's Defence Ministry is moving to remove Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor's last honorary military rank, acting under the guidance of King Charles. Defence Secretary John Healey has stated that the King had indicated that's what he wishes, confirming that work is underway to strip Andrew of his rank as Vice Admiral in the Royal Navy. The decision follows his loss of all other royal titles and privileges after months of pressure over his links to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein allegations he has always denied. Andrew has served 22 years in the Navy, including as a helicopter pilot in the Falklands War. Royal commentators say the move marks a final fall from grace for the king's brother, as the monarch takes a ruthless stance on stripping his remaining honors. Now for this discussion, we welcome Andrew Reborn Barrister. He's a broadcaster and futurist, as well as president of Octopus TV Limited. Joins us live from London. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, can you tell us how significant is this, and what precedent does this removal of Prince Andrew's last rank or title set for other members of the royal family, also who are involved in controversies?
It's an extraordinary situation. There has been a tsunami of scandal which has dominated the headlines, not just here, but around the world, with a catalogue of disasters, and the pressure has been put on more and more on Andrew, formerly Prince Andrew. As you say, last week the King took the extraordinary step on Thursday to initiate a formal process, because that's what it required, to remove the style, titles and honours of Prince Andrew. So he's no longer known as Prince Andrew, he's now known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He's also going to be booted out, thrown out of his royal home, which is the Royal Lodge. It's a 30-room mansion, which has to date, basically, he had legal protection there. He had this 75-year lease where he was only paying what's called a peppercorn rent, which meant that it was a nominal figure that he was paid, although he did pay £1 million up front and has also been obliged to contribute to the upkeep, which to date is about 7.5 to 8.5 million, so not a small amount. But because he's going to be leaving early, he's going to be entitled to compensation, which I've calculated could be in excess of £500,000 for basically the shortening of what was going to be 25 years, the first 25 years of his lease. So more of that's going to come out, but basically formal notice has been served. I think he's going to be likely moving out after Christmas because it said he's going to move to Sandringham, the Sandringham estate, and as people will know, the Sandringham is where the royal family normally spend Christmas, and they want to distance themselves from Andrew as much as possible. We had the very uncomfortable scenes at the Duchess of Kent's funeral fairly recently, where Andrew was shown next to Prince William, and he felt incredibly uncomfortable. And I understand that ruthless Prince William is being quite determined. It's basically the scorch earth policy, if you like, that he wants to distance himself from Andrew as much as possible, because it's damaging the royal family, it's damaging the monarchy. And we have to put this into context, because the royal family is worth about 2.5, that's £2.5 billion to the British economy through tourism and various other things. And I looked at that on my show, the Andrew Eborn Show, on more platforms than Paddington, looking at the economic effect of that sort of side, because the royal scandals will tarnish the crown unless it's dealt with appropriately. And those are the steps which are currently being taken. But more and more scandals are going to be coming out as we had this. We had Virginia Giuffre's book, Nobody's Girl, has been published. More and more scandals have erupted as a result of that. And basically what's going to happen, that we're going to be seeing more and more press as a result of it. So do watch this space for these revelations to come out. But for now, the royals are distancing themselves from Andrew. This has been a very dramatic stage and a seismic move in the last few days.
Yes, as also you rightly mentioned, building on your answer, you've mentioned that the book Nobody's Girl was published recently, and a lot of scandals coming out as Jeffrey Epstein case unfolds. How is it, or how will it influence public confidence in the monarchy's role in British institutions? As you mentioned, the body language of Prince William was also uncomfortable near Prince Andrew, and a lot of things going on in the British monarchy.
Yeah, there certainly are a lot of things going on in the British monarchy, and the general public used to love the late Queen, Queen Elizabeth, and the Queen Mother. They were idolised by the general public, and there's been a lot of controversy. There's when Prince Harry decided to go over to America with Meghan Markle, there was a lot of negative press around that. Obviously, a huge amount of negative press around Andrew, the former prince, and so on and so forth. So the general public were turning around and saying something had to be done. And the real question was why did it take so long? That's always going to be the issue. But the fact is it has now happened. And King Charles himself has got his own struggles. He's been very public about his cancer diagnosis. We've also had Princess Catherine with her own cancer diagnosis. And the general public are very sympathetic, and they adore particularly Princess Catherine for her role that she's done talking about these issues in public, because it helps so many others suffering in the same sort of way. But I always make the point that trust comes in on foot but leaves on horseback. And trust in the police, trust in the monarchy, trust in the press generally is at an all-time low. And that trust needs to be rebuilt. And I would hope that this is a good stage towards it. There was also a brilliant series on Netflix, basically with Eugenie Levy, and I was honoured to be invited by Netflix because I host the podcast for the Royal Television Society at London over here, and I was invited to go along to the premiere of that with Eugene Levy and his extraordinary interview with Prince William. And Prince William was showing a very human side. He wants to revolutionise and modernise the monarchy. And I think the public's trust in that will be restored on that sort of basis. He wants to get rid of some of the pomp and ceremony, which I think may be a mistake because the general public and tourism love the people dressing up in the robes and so on and so forth. But he wants to look at that sort of side. But basically he also wants it to be far more accessible. He talks about his own children not having access to mobile phones. He wants to engage in conversations, and he basically says, look, every day they sit down as a family and talk about the issues of the day. Now that's great advice for people around the world anyway about family values, and we want the royal family to lead, to be shining examples of what they can do for us. He also talked about mental health. Another thing which affects lots of people, and on my show, the Andrew Eborn Show, I recommend talk to lots of celebrities, people around the world, about the own struggles that they have. And I want us to be the generation that talks about mental health so that the next generation doesn't suffer the stigma. And William's talked about his own troubled childhood, being brought up with a divorced family. He was very public about that, and the King might have felt a bit uncomfortable about those comments. But trying to say, look, the family unit is so important. So I think the future of the monarchy should be that. They should be leading people by example. They should be uniting the nation behind them. And I think Prince William, with the words and his openness, which we've seen more and more of, is going in the right direction.
Yeah, with that, I would like to thank Andrew Eborn, barrister, for joining us and sharing that insight. Thank you very much for joining us. Now we stay in the region. British police are investigating a mass stabbing on a London-bound train that has left several people injured, including 2 in critical condition. The attack had occurred on Saturday night between Doncaster and London's King Cross station. Police have stopped the train at Huntington in Cambridgeshire, where armed officers boarded and arrested 2 suspects within minutes of the first emergency call. Let's listen into what the police has said.
Within 8 minutes of the 999 call being made, 2 men were brought into police custody, where they remain this morning. I can tell you that these are, the first male, a 32-year-old male, a black British national, and a 35-year-old man, a British national of Caribbean descent. They were both arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. Both were born in the United Kingdom. As stated, they remain this morning in separate police stations.
Authorities have said that both suspects are British nationals, a 32-year-old man and 35-year-old man, and have been detained on suspicion of attempted murder. Police have ruled out terrorism and are still investigating the motive. Witnesses have described scenes of panic and bloodshed as passengers tried to escape the attacker wielding a large knife. 10 people were taken to hospital with 4 later discharged. Huntington Station remained closed as forensic teams continue their work. Officials, including Prime Minister Keir Starmer and King Charles, have expressed shock and concern over this incident. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.